Hi, my name is Shannon Brumley, and I'm a junior here at LHS.
Hi, my name is Erin Gertner, and I'm a junior at Lawrenceville High School.
My name is Gracie Sapp. I am a junior at Lawrenceville High School.
My name's Sarah. I go to school at Lawrenceville High School.
Recently, I got the opportunity to interview Melinda Cunningham-Young at Cunningham-Young Funeral Homes.
Going into the experience, I was a little weary of what she might have to say.
Death is something that not a lot of people talk about, and I didn't know a lot about it.
I wasn't expecting her to say what she said.
My name is Melinda Young, and I'm a funeral director and embalmer here in Lawrence County. My family owns and operates 3 funeral homes here in the county, and that's what I do. My family started back in the 70s when my dad purchased one of the funeral homes here in Lawrence County. Actually, he purchased 2. But prior to that, he had been active in the funeral industry since he was 16, which puts that back in the 60s. No, actually, they didn't really let us in the funeral home. I shouldn't say let us in, but they didn't want us out there involved in the day-to-day operations of the funeral home. But we had plenty of other things to do. We had farms and stuff, so he could keep us busy doing that. But I didn't work in the funeral home until I was in my 20s.
Family?
I do. I have a family. My husband, Jason, he's an accountant. And I have 2 children. A little girl, she's 10. I call her little, but she's 10. And then a son who's 7. And they are both very active in different sports and activities. So that puts another just spin to my unpredictable day. Sure. My childhood within the funeral business and having a funeral family, I guess you'd say, was pretty normal. You know, we did all the normal sports activities. My parents, were able to be there for a lot of them. I would say I was lucky in that aspect. Maybe kind of a different profession for them, compared to a lot of parents, but really lucky in the fact that they could make it to, just about all of my functions. They could be there and be instructive. They had the time where they could be coaches and so forth, so I was pretty lucky. I was I enjoyed athletics. I was into basketball. I ran track, not so much into track. But, and then I played baseball up until I was too old to play really with the boys anymore. And I didn't transition over to softball. I wish I would have now. But, all the different clubs that you had during school, I couldn't even go through all of them. But yes, very active in a lot of different aspects. Well, I was always a daddy's girl, and I think growing up I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I want to move, I'm going to stay home and work with my dad. But then there came a time once I was out of college, I realized that that's what I was going to do, is come back home and get my education and work for them. Different states, as far as education, mortician, are different. But in the state of Illinois, you don't have to have a 4-year degree. You have to have a 2-year associate's. But it's the normal, all of your normal broad-based education, math and so forth. And then normally, like your 2nd year, you go more into the more specific, like you have embalming clinicals, you have restorative art clinicals and labs. But a lot of your science and your, chemistry, we have to do a lot of that. A lot of chemistry, microbiology, and all that fun stuff. Did I ever think that my family's profession was spooky? Yes and no. It was just something I grew up with. It didn't really bother me. However, if they would send me out there, in the evenings to get something, I was definitely, on alert. Sure, a lot of families do live at the funeral home or in the funeral home, but that was a lot more common, maybe a few generations back. Now, most of them don't live there at the funeral home. However, our house growing up was right next to the funeral home, so actually part of the funeral home, no, but it was connected by a walkway, so we were right there all the time. Okay. I think very short-lived. I did live in Evansville. After I got done with school there, I lived there for about another 2 years. I do enjoy the small town, so to say that I ever had the true aspirations to move away and live somewhere big just wasn't it for me anyway. My spare time, when I do have it, I like to do outdoors things. I like to go ride our horses. I like to go fishing. I like to just, I mean, it sounds stupid to say just hang out outside, but I do. I enjoy spending time with my kids, doing things like that. So that's what I do with my spare time when I have it. Cremation is a big change within our industry, which it's a good, people ask me, oh, I bet you don't like the, change into cremation. Like, I don't care what people pick. I'm just here to facilitate what they want. So that's a really big change that we're seeing. It makes a big difference in revenue and workload and different type of legalities. But I see that, and then of course in our county, the economy has changed a lot in the last few years. Mainly the technology that has been significant is where we do death certificates. We don't handwrite those or type them out anymore and take them to the doctor's office and then take them to the court, the courthouse. It's all done over the internet now, and that's what we do. It's this big internet system that every state has it, and that's how we enter in deaths. Not only that, but technology has then made a big difference with services. A lot of people use slideshows, DVDs, they want things recorded, they have, tape music and so forth. So, yes, some things are minor, but some things are pretty important. For me, it's just the day-to-day unpredictable schedule. I don't know. I may take my kids to school, and they always ask me, who's picking us up today? I don't know. I'm fortunate that I have a lot of family here that can help me out and friends, but that's probably the most difficult part, is just not knowing what I'm going to be doing the rest of the day.
Period.
You're right. Yes, there are time frames that I'm kind of given by families, like, well, we want to have things this day. Okay. I had, sometimes you have them come in, they meet you on a Friday, and they want to do everything on Saturday. That's a tough turnaround, but you do what you have to do to facilitate what they want. So yes, sometimes time frames with when a family is choosing to have services is difficult. It's hard to find someone who can relate to the emotional and I'd say just the emotional roller coaster that you do get on. I mean, and most times you can disassociate yourself with what's going on, what you're serving the family for, or the situation they're in. But there's sometimes it just affects you more than others. And you're right, there's not a lot of people that can understand that. However, I'm really fortunate that I have a family that also has funeral homes that I've grown close to, and one of their family members I can talk to about anything.
Yeah.
It's hard to advertise in this business because no one wants to talk about death. It's an inevitable part of our lives, but nobody wants to sit down across the table from me and talk about it, their ultimate demise. But I think you just try to put yourself in situations or marketing situations where it has a good feeling about it. I'm actually going through like how I help families try to, I don't want to say transition, but to go from the tragic death to understanding and to accepting. Is I'm not a psychologist. I don't have any degrees of that sort. But a lot of situations, and I'm going through part of that now with my mother has incredibly poor health, and it's the fact of they're not struggling anymore. And there's not every situation that works for. There's a lot of tragic deaths of young folks or someone who was unexpected. But there's also a lot of deaths. The vast majority of them are folks who have been ill, they've been sick, and they've struggled. And sometimes if it's just saying that they're not struggling anymore, kind of helps them say, gosh, we did watch her struggle a lot. Mm-hmm. We did watch her suffer. So nothing I say ever makes anything better or easier. It's just the way it is. And sometimes saying nothing is the best thing you can do. Yes, I would say that the biggest thing that I've learned, taken away from this at this point, is that no matter how bad my day is, I could be having a horrible day, whatever the reason, terrible day, but when I'm sitting there meeting with a family, I know that the people across the table from me are having a much worse day than I am. And that's just kind of how, now you hate to say, well, it could always be worse. Well, you know, sometimes that is what you have to take away from it, is that I'm here, I'm okay, my family's okay, but they're going through a terrible time. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've day-to-day take with me. We have to rely on, as far as business partnerships, we have to rely on casket companies providing what they're telling us. You know, we call and we order it. They are supposed to deliver on time. We have vault companies that are supposed to, you know, I call and I order it, and they're supposed to be there at the cemetery. So, you know, those are things where it's out of my control. I initiate the process, but their ultimate duty is their own, and that's sometimes hard to let someone else have responsibility that I can't control. So I always, like when I call a vault company, I always, you know, write it down that I ordered it. But every time I go to a cemetery, I'm like, where's the blue tent? Where's the blue tent? Okay, sure. But it's just the way it is, because you want everything to be so perfect for families. But there's florists that we have to get in contact with. There's chemical companies that I have to make orders with. Gosh, lots of different pieces and parts that go together. And paperwork, that's another big time consumer. So I would say, unless it's someone who, a lot of times if someone passes away from here, we have to have it done by someone local there. You know, we may have someone that passed away in Texas, you know, so we normally have, we have relationships with places all over the country, you know, that we've dealt with before. So if someone passes away in San Antonio, well, we go back through our files and say, oh yeah, well, we dealt with so-and-so company back in 2010, let's call them. And they go and pick the individual up, prepare them for shipping, and that's the lack of better terms. But and then we have them flown to Indy, and we would go get them. But yes, I do, that wasn't even your question. Yes, I do the vast majority of all the embalmings here.
How do they?
They go on a regular flight down in the freight section. So they have big, well, kind of plywood type boxes. They're called shipping trays. So they're prepared most of the time. You know, they're not in caskets or whatever. They're just, they're in these shipping trays, and they're in the freight department or the freight section. And then once they get in, they're then transported from where the plane is over to say Southwestern. Anyway, over to their facility, to their big bays, their big garages, and that's where we would go pick them up. The first time my dad let me help was after I said, you know, I think I'm going to move back home and go to mortuary school. You know, what I was doing was okay. It was just time for me to either go get my master's or go do something else. And he's like, okay, that's fine. Let's, you know, next time we have a death, you can come back and observe. And it was different. I mean, you know, I knew they couldn't feel it. I knew that. But it's just seeing some of that for the first time.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he goes, I think you need to go, you know, go take a break, go sit down. I walk in the house, my mom goes, you look a little green.
Coming out of the interview, I was actually very surprised.
It went better than I thought it would because she was easy to talk to.
I just really love talking with a mortician and, you know, really getting to see a look into their career.
There were certain aspects that I wouldn't have thought about that played a huge role in her profession.
It was really interesting to see how she does her job and the many things that she deals with on a daily basis.
I learned a lot from the interview, a lot more than I expected to.